Hello, everyone. This is Mary Montgomery of Stearns-Montgomery and Proctor in Atlanta, Georgia. On today's podcast, I had a great telephone conversation with my colleague, Hallie Willis, an associate attorney at our Marietta office. We discussed some of the complexities in obtaining a passport for a minor child when the parents are divorced. We hope you enjoy the conversation and gain some insight into how to navigate this situation if you're faced with it.
Hallie, this is Mary Montgomery. How are you today?
I'm well, Mary. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Today I want to talk about getting a passport for your minor child when the parents are separated. Can you help me with that?
Sure, I sure can.
Okay, tell me, if you have a client with primary custody of a minor child, will they be able to travel out of the country with their child?
Yes, Mary, they will be able to, provided that they have primary legal custody. I think it's important to remember that in Georgia, at least, there is legal custody and physical custody. And if a parent has sole legal custody, they will be able to obtain a passport for their minor child without the consent of the second parent. Now, of course, if both parents consent, regardless of who has legal custody, the minor will be able to, they will be able to obtain a passport for the minor child. But the laws do provide, there's a two-parent consent law that provides that both parents must consent to getting the child a passport if they do share legal custody.
Going to apply for the passport is where you're going to get stuck. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And so, what obstacles might primary custodian encounter when trying to get that passport or that application filled out with the other parent?
If you have a primary or sole legal custodian, when the parent goes to apply for the passport, there are a couple different things that the primary custodian can show, and one of those is an order from the court granting that parent sole legal custody. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated if there is an order you can get saying that even if the parent does not have sole legal custody, that regardless, that parent can get the passport without the consent of the other parent. But you will have to show the passport office some documentation showing that you were able to obtain that passport without the consent of the other parent.
So would be sufficient just to have sole custody, or is that not sufficient? So you also have to have the court add additional language that says, that this sole custodian can take the child out of the country. Or is having sole custody enough?
Having sole custody will be enough.
Okay. But so then if you just have primary, in a joint custody situation, then you're saying having language in the order that says you can apply for a passport on your own, that is sufficient.
Correct. And that's something definitely parents need to consider if they are going through a divorce and if they have family outside of the United States, to go ahead and include that language in the divorce decree and parenting plan that both parents should cooperate in obtaining the minor child's passport should they decide to do so, especially when you are sharing legal custody. And, it would be an extra, safeguard for a parent who has full legal custody regardless in that divorce decree and parenting plan to go ahead and include that language. So there's no question when that parent decides to go apply for the passport that he or she has that ability to obtain that passport.
Mm-hmm. So, it makes a lot of sense then to make sure you address this issue. So even if you don't have family in another country, and certainly, especially if you do. But if you want to travel, let's say, with your new spouse or new family or just separately, you'll need to make sure that your child has a passport. And getting both of the parents who are separated or estranged from one another to go down to the passport office to fill out all the paperwork is not, an ideal situation. So then what if in negotiations, let's say, the other parent says, well, because they have joint legal custody, they're like, well, no, I'm not willing to just give a carte blanche that they can go down and get a passport whenever they want. If the parent, they have, joint custody, but they're not, the one other parent is not a primary. What if they don't want to do that? What then? What can you do in the order, or what can you do to get around that?
I guess you could include some sort of more generic language that the parent should, be cooperative in good faith and be cooperative in major decisions regarding the child's travel outside of the United States, rather than specifically stating we will, I give the ability for the other parent to do this without my consent. You could include some sort of more generic language that the parties should, confer with each other on a good faith basis and cooperate in making those major decisions regarding the child's travel outside of the United States. That's something that comes to my mind. I don't know if you have any other.
No, that sounds definitely, you'd want to do that, order some kind of cooperation. Right. So what if I have gotten a divorce and, I wasn't thinking about it at the time, or I've gotten separated, even having not been married, and there's nothing the order is silent, the final parenting plan order is silent on this issue. What's my next recourse of action?
Sure. At that point, you could file a modification of that order in order to, include some language in there. If you needed to take legal action, there's also a possibility you might be able to apply to court and petition to have the court issue an order stating that you don't need the other parent's consent on that. Those are kind of two legal avenues if you are unable to get the other parent to cooperate. Now, I have had in the past, when this situation has arisen, just written a simple demand letter from an attorney, and sometimes, that simple act can kind of push the other parent to start cooperating. So that's definitely something, we could help you out with, or a client with, if they did encounter this and weren't willing to or needing to, go through the actions to file an actual modification. And if there is language in the order that includes that kind of, general language we were talking about with regards to cooperation, the client or the parent might have a case for contempt as well if the parent is not cooperating.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the letter from the attorney might be a good place to start, because the other parent would then have to decide whether or not they want to get embroiled in some kind of litigation at that point.
Exactly.
Right. And one other question, please, for Hallie. What if I'm in Georgia, my ex is in Georgia, my child's in Georgia, but the court order that I have is from a different state. Does that make a difference?
Sure, yes. If all parties are now here in Georgia, but you still have that order, and you don't have any other ties to that state any longer, jurisdiction over that order could be domesticated, or the order could be domesticated here in Georgia so that we would have jurisdiction over it. And in, tandem with that domestication, you could include a modification as well in order to be able to, have the Georgia courts have authority to be able to alter that order that you had in a different state.
Okay. And so what if so I'm here in Georgia, but the other parent, the client is here in Georgia, but the other parent is still in that other state, the original state that issued the order. Is that a difficulty for me, or what kind of obstacles does that create?
Sure. We also need to consider where the child is. If the child is here with you in Georgia, you may, be able to modify based under the UCCJEA. But if the child is still in the other state, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty getting jurisdiction here in Georgia. At that point, I would recommend that you at least give a call to an attorney in the state where the child and the other parent reside.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.